During the last 50 years or so, scientists have discovered, to their surprise, that the existence of intelligent life in this universe depends upon a complex and delicate balance of initial conditions given in the Big Bang itself.
The universe, its basic structure has to be just right in order for life to occur.
So like the laws of physics exist on a razor's edge, and the slightest change to the right or left and the whole universe would be inhospitable to life.
Everything has to be just so, like in Goldilocks, right? Not too hot, not too cold, but just right.
Carbon levels, gravitational force.
Fine-tuned to the precision of 1 part out of 10 to the 100th power.
I don't have enough faith to believe that it just happened to be right there.
And somehow, someone has adjusted them just perfectly.
The fine-tuning points towards a fine-tuner.
The fine-tuning argument is one of the most popular modern arguments for the existence of God. As you heard, apologists use it to argue that the life-permitting states of the physical constants are more likely achieved if there is a God who can put them in place. It's suggested that the chances of a coherent, life-permitting universe existing are extremely improbable and unlikely in the absence of a God who can finely tune it. Though this argument may sound persuasive, I'd like to highlight some problematic areas of the argument and illustrate why I find it unconvincing. I think it's worth asking, why does God need to fine-tune anything? If God is the all-powerful creator of the universe, couldn't he have created a universe in which fine-tuning wasn't necessary? Couldn't he have created these constants in such a way that, no matter what position they held, life would still be possible within that universe? As others have suggested, it might be more evidence for a God if we found ourselves in a universe that wasn't life-permitting, and we managed to live anyway. Another question worth asking is, if the universe is finely tuned for us, why is most of the known universe completely uninhabitable? We certainly can't survive in the vacuum of outer space without protection. Our own planet is more water than land. It seems that, at best, the fine-tuning argument suggests that we are fine-tuned to live in one extremely small corner of the universe on a fraction of a single planet. These criticisms only scratch the surface. The fine-tuning argument also has many hidden assumptions that may be unjustified. One assumption it makes is that, if a God exists, it would want to create a universe with life. How do we know that this is what a God would want? Maybe God would want to create a universe with no life. Maybe God would want to be the only thing in existence. What is the probability that God would want to create a life-permitting universe at all? If God could have decided to create any number of things, or even nothing at all, our odds of God creating a life-permitting universe aren't much more than pure chance. A theist may want to argue that God is the type of being who would logically want to create a universe with life. However, this isn't our only problem. The other assumption here is embedded in the argument itself.
If just one of them were even slightly turned.
The assumption here is that the physical constants could have been different. But why? What is the justification for this? Maybe the universe works in such a way that the constants couldn't have been any other way. Perhaps the universe has a natural disposition towards life-permitting constants. These haven't been ruled out as possibilities. It doesn't seem obvious that the constants could have held any other value than they do. Now, what about this assertion we keep hearing that, assuming it's possible for the physical constants to change in value, life would not exist?
The laws of nature have to be just right in order for life to occur.
Absolutely necessary in order for life to exist on planet Earth.
No life on planet Earth.
There's an easy response to this assertion. How do you know this? How have these apologists ruled out the possibility of any life existing under a different combination of physical parameters? Do we have enough information to support this? Theoretical physicist Sean Carroll explains what we would have to do in order to calculate this.
If we were really serious about making the claim that the parameters of the universe are clearly finely tuned in such a way as to allow for the existence of life, this is the kind of argument we would have to make. We would have to say, consider all possible physical theories, consider all possible cosmological manifestations of those laws of physics, consider all possible ways that life and or consciousness or something like that could exist within those universes, and then calculate the fraction of those universes compared to the total number of possible universes. Now, nobody does this. Religious people who want to argue that fine-tuning is evidence for God don't do this. Physicists and cosmologists who want to argue that the multiverse is necessary to explain things don't do this. Nobody does this because it's wildly impractical. Our knowledge of all possible laws of physics isn't anywhere close to allowing us to make this argument.
This problem gets even worse. Remember how specific our own parameters are? Let's look at one example.
The force of gravity and the weak force in the atom have to be fine-tuned to the precision of 1 part out of 10 to the 100th power.
Okay, well, if you were searching for possible life-permitting combinations of these constants, and you were just off by 1 part out of 10 to the 100th power, you'd miss it. The more finely tuned the constants are, the harder it is for theists to rule out any potential life-permitting combinations. And yet, seemingly without attempting any calculations or understanding the fundamental requirements for life, the apologists assert that life is impossible under any other circumstances. How did they conclude this? If the apologists have no way of calculating whether or not life could exist under different conditions, then they have no way of calculating how probable a life-permitting universe is in the first place. Now let's look at a way in which the fine-tuning argument may actually turn on itself. The reason why God fine-tunes the universe in the first place is so that God can create conscious living beings with minds capable of contemplating his existence, making free moral choices, and being in a relationship with him. This is what God is supposedly after. However, if God desires to create beings with minds capable of loving him, does he really need to create a fine-tuned universe? The problem is, a theist can't suggest that such a universe is necessary for a mind to exist, because their own God is supposed to be a mind that exists outside of the material world. Therefore, God could potentially create minds that could function without the fine-tuned physical constants. If they suggest that a mind must exist in a physical universe, they are ruling out their own God altogether. The fine-tuning argument comes off as very ad hoc and doesn't seem to have much predictive power. We don't have the ability to predict what kind of universe God would create before he creates it. So we can simply look at the universe we find ourselves in and declare that this is the kind of universe a God would create. This is the equivalent of painting the target around an arrow and declaring it a bullseye. We can effectively challenge the fine-tuning argument even without proposing some sort of naturalistic explanation, like the multiverse. I think that the argument leans on our own feelings of self-importance. It's easy to see how some people would think that the universe must have been created just for them. But the truth is, we are only a very small, insignificant part of the universe. Douglas Adams illustrates the perception of fine-tuning rather well with this analogy. This is rather as if you imagine a puddle waking up one morning and thinking, "This is an interesting world I find myself in. An interesting hole I find myself in. Fits me rather neatly, doesn't it? In fact, it fits me staggeringly well. Must have been made to have me in it." Maybe if the physical constants could have taken another form of life would be remarking how finely tuned the universe was for them. Though some Christians often get hung up on evolution by natural selection, it certainly makes sense that a process such as this would help life adapt to its specific environment. It seems more likely that we evolved to fit our universe, rather than the universe was designed with us in mind. Regardless, at the end of the day, the fine-tuning argument relies on unjustified assumptions and unsubstantiated claims about the nature of cosmology. It's also potentially self-defeating. Upon closer inspection, there are a whole host of problems that require further justification. We've made great progress in physics and cosmology over the years, but we don't yet know enough to draw these conclusions about certain probabilities. It's best that we keep our minds open and continue trying to discover more about our universe together.